Sun rising, I resumed my journey. He spent the night, probably freezing cold, in Tibet. He wasn't in Tibet yet. That day, Swami Trigunatita reached Ashkot, where the Raja to whom Lala Budri Shah had written, and showed him great hospitality and kindness. But at Ashkot, he caught hill fever, from which he suffered severely for a week. The people of Ashkot told him that to proceed on his journey in that condition would eventually, inevitably, bring upon a fatal attack of pneumonia, but that to delay would be to miss the season for going to Tibet. He chose to proceed. The kindly and devout Raja gave him a Brahmin cook and a coolie, and made all necessary arrangements ahead for his bhiksha and asana, meaning his food and his lodgings. He advised him to go by way of the Dharma Pass, an easier route, which the old men of Almora had not known. Further, he gave him an umbrella, a double-breasted coat of broadcloth, and a pair of hill-made shoes intended for the sun, rain, and cold. 9 days and 65 miles later, the Swami, the Brahmin cook, and the coolie reached Go, a village in the Perguna of Dharma, at an elevation of 11,000 feet. They were now in the real Himalayas. The government roads had ended. There were only trails, no more milestones, no more cultivation, no more trees, and the poison that had begun its devastating work. Gingerly they crossed 2 glaciers on a little level maidan, a public land. Near Go were pitched the tents of an agent for Tibet. Into the main tent of the agent there came a Kamba, one of the nomadic tribe of central Tibet, though Tibet had by no means been reached. This Kamba carried a rosary, the beads of which he constantly counted, while talking of business matters with the agent. From time to time, he would grow silent, his eyes becoming deeply indrawn, and then for a moment or so would continue, after a moment or so would continue his conversation. The agent asked this meditative man whether the Swami would be allowed to enter Tibet and visit Kailash and Manasavar. Manasavar is the lake that's right below Kailash. Looking at the Swami's delicate body and unlikely dress, he said no. That not only would the Tibetan guards oppose him, but that he would die first because of the poison and the difficulty of the ascent. He then asked the Swami about his guru, and being told of Sri Ramakrishna, he at once changed his tune and assured the Swami that he would never meet with opposition. Thereupon, the agent decreed that the Swami could enter Tibet and made arrangements for him to go by way of the Dharma Pass along with a caravan of bouteilles. He sent with him a new coolie and some food. So, on July 21st, Swami Trigunatita, feeling very weak from his recent fever, left Go with the caravan, which consisted altogether, including the Swami and his coolie, of 12 men and a flock of sheep and goats. These sheep were no ordinary sheep, but pack animals, each carrying a saddlebag laden with goods slung across its broad woolly back. The goats were the leaders of this docile flock. Can you picture this? Being more sure-footed and alert. But there was also a guard dog and a jabo, a cross between a yak and a cow, used to transport things too bulky or heavy for the little sheep. Sure-footedness was required. The road around the precipices was sometimes wide enough for only one animal or one man, Moreover, it was not horizontally level, but slanted toward the outer edge into the bottom of the gorge far below. I imagine if any of you've done any hiking, you've hit trails like that. Here and there, along this precarious trail, were heaps of loose pebbles and stones, which could easily slide off the edge, carrying beast or man with them. Generally, however, except for the increasing poison, things were easier, and the caravan plodded on, stopping for the night wherever they found pasture for the flock, shrubs for fuel, and water. In such rare, hospitable places, they would erect makeshift tents into which Swami Trigunatita could crawl, if he were lucky enough to find room. Or he could make his own tent out of a cotton sheet and roll up his tulma, a very thick and soft blanket which he had purchased along the way after leaving Goa. On the third day, the Swami would write, my distress knew no bounds. At every step, I felt the difficulty of breathing in spite of the imperceptibility of our ascent. But he continued to find the scenery beautiful and to feel elated within. The caravan came to a scattered village of the Kambas. At this place, while the Swami, exhausted, was passing by a tent, a loving Kamba mother called out to him from within and asked him to take a little rest. The caravan went on, telling him to catch up. The Kumbha mother, with whom the Swami could communicate a little, gave him tea and rice, both awful tasting in their Tibetan way, but laced with kindness. After he had had this breakfast and rest, he hurried after the caravan and found them waiting. Instantly they proceeded on their way, allowing him no further halt. During the latter part of the day, the Swami would write, my power of dragging on my body in a region of the atmosphere so much rarefied was strained to the utmost. I was no more in my element, physically speaking. I could no more look up or around to enjoy the heavenly scenery. I could no more even speak or give vent to my sufferings. I felt then almost like an earthworm when dug out of the soil and kept exposed to the air, or like a fish brought up out of its own element. Twilight came, and the caravan came near the foot of the great snowy frontier hill of the Dharma Pass into Tibet. The Swami, who had dropped behind, now caught up, and my head seemed to whirl. I sank upon the ground, tired to death. I believe the poisoning that he's talking about is altitude sickness, the lack of oxygenation. The men of the caravan did what they could for him, even feeding him a little until he revived. Then they declined all in a body to take further charge of him. For he was, after all, more dead than alive, and could not possibly survive crossing into Tibet. He should return, they said, with his coolie to the village of Go, but he refused. I, in a voice low and feeble, tried to express my impetuous thirst for a view of the grand and sublime beauty of Kailash, the seat of bliss, if only for once. I was all the time very firm in my determination not to go back disappointed. The men saw no further use in arguing and let him sleep. The next morning, the fourth day since leaving Go, the caravan set out before dawn. It was impossible for Swami Trigunatita to walk without help. One of the men, younger and kinder than the rest, agreed, for a promised fee, to let the sannyasin lean on him, and thus they proceeded. By the gray of the morning, the Swami wrote, we all arrived at the foot of the pass. The precipitous cliff of the pass, half a mile in height from the base, was now before us to be got over. The buttes began ascending. I tried much, but I fell back and sank down on the ground. They only told me, panting as they were, follow us if you can, or we leave you to your fate. God help you. They proceeded further and further up. If there had been any possible way for Swami Trigunatita to have climbed that precipitous half-mile, he would have done so. But in his narrative, there was no way. The caravan disappeared. They were not to blame, he wrote. The precipice had to be climbed, and the glacier at its top, 18,000 feet, crossed before the sun rose to melt the snow, or before a storm came up, spelling in either case death for all. It was only in the early morning that the traveler has comparatively less chance of falling a victim to the perils of these regions. Under these circumstances, my companions were forced at once to leave me to my fate, and that fate, his companions had no doubt at all, was death. He could hear the men whistling to drive their flock as they climbed. The whistling grew fainter and fainter until there was only profound silence and profound cold. His coolie had run off with his tulma. That was his fuzzy blanket. He was alone. Of this dire predicament, he wrote, after a while I sat up. I saw nothing but silent hills of shining silvery snow standing on all sides. Myself in their midst, alone, was a witness of the vast and deep solitude all around. Nay, to me, accurately speaking, it was no solitude. The natural monuments, charming and hoary-headed, the old abodes of gods and goddesses, of angels and seraphim, were there before me on all sides, ready to respond to my soliloquies in their speechless, superhuman voice. To me, they were actually living persons. I loved them as my own. Many a tear of inexpressible joy stood on my eyes. I sat to meditate on the Supreme Being, the First Cause, the all-pervading and ever-living intelligent bliss, or Satchidananda. Alas, I could not sit quiet long. My senses now gradually began to yield to the stupefying influence of severe cold and thin air. I could no more keep my head up, and now reclined on a rock with my forehead down in a sleepy mood. I fully resigned myself to the will of God. Mother Nature fanned the cold and thin air so as to lull me to sleep. And there Swami Trigunatita's story to the Indian mirror ends. There was no more. He was writing these, remember, for the Indian Mirror. The discerning readers of this serialized tale would have known, as will the present reader, that the Swami had somehow lived to tell it. Actually, he made his way into Tibet and back to Calcutta. The Journey of the Mahabodhi Society for January 1896 wrote, Swami Trigunatitananda, this sannyasi disciple of Paramahamsa Ramakrishna, undertook a few months ago a perilous journey over the snowy ranges of the Himalayan mountains with a view to visit the holy shrines of Mount Kailash and Lake Manasavar, so sacred to the Hindus. The Swami, with commendable zeal and fortitude, had to go on foot for days together through perpetual snow ranges at an altitude of 22,000, and there's a question mark this, feet. After an eventful journey, he has come back to Calcutta. He has observed some old photos of Christ in some monasteries of Tibet, and he believes, from what he has seen of Tibet, that the discovery of the Tibetan record of Christ's life by the Russian explorer is not without foundation. Christ is regarded by the lamas to be an Indian god. The Swami is much pleased at the reception which he received in the monastery from the lamas. Swami Trigunatita, we believe, is writing a description of this interesting journey. The Theosophic Thinker of January 1896 printed a similar article. Swami Trigunatita was the first, but not the only monk of the Ramakrishna order, to believe that Nicholas Notovich's The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ was not without foundation. Translated into English in 1895, this book relates that Notovich came upon manuscripts in Tibet which show that at the age of 14, Jesus, in order to avoid the marriage being planned by his parents, had left Jerusalem, traveled to India, and eventually to Tibet, where he lived for many years, returning to Jerusalem at the age of 29. Swami Abhedananda, who would read Notovich's sensational book in America, and who would visit Tibet in 1922 to verify its claims, became a firm believer. But Swami Vivekananda, to whom Swami Trigunatita wrote on his return from Tibet, telling him of the old manuscripts he himself had seen, was skeptical, if not scornful. On March 2nd of 1896, he replied to his younger brother with a blast. On perusal of your letter on Tibet, I came to lose all regard for your common sense. In the first place, it is nonsense to say that Notovich's book is genuine. Did you see any original copy or bring it to India? Secondly, you say you saw in the Kailash Mat the portrait of Jesus and the Samaritan woman. How do you know that it was Jesus' portrait and not that a man of the street? Even taking it for granted, how do you know that it was not put up in the said mat by someone who was a Christian? And your opinions on the Tibetans, too, are unsound. You did not certainly see the heart of Tibet, but only a fringe of the trade route. In places like those, only the dregs of a nation are to be met. He didn't spare his comments, did he? If on seeing the China Bazaar quarters of Calcutta, anyone would call every Bengali a liar, would that be correct? Consult Shashi properly when writing any article. What you need is only obedience. Okay. Well, Swamiji did not spare his opinion. In the meantime, Swami Trigunatita had sent the first installment of his Tibetan articles to Swamiji. Swamiji was pleased. I am in receipt of your letter and the copy of the Indian Mirror. He wrote to Sarada on April 14th in 1896. Your contribution is good. Go on writing regularly. What to do? Swami Trigunatita must have received Swamiji's debunking letter in April of 1896, by which time 3 installments of Swami Trigunatita's visit to Tibet had come out in the Indian Mirror and in the Journal of the Mahabodhi Society. Had already been made public the news that the Swami had discovered the old photographs of Christ. Photographs. In obedience to Swamiji, the Tibetan Odyssey had to be continued, but by the same token, it had to be killed. The only way to do both these things was to kill the pilgrim himself after a suitable time. I guess that's why we got that, and he fell asleep. The solution, one surmises, was behind the tragic ending to Swami Trigunatita's visit to Tibet. To God. But was it so tragic after all? One could take the pilgrimage as a sort of allegory. Factual though the tale surely was in all its particulars, at least up to the ninth and final installment, its abrupt ending would cast over the whole a light of inner meaning. The pilgrim had known all along that he might well never attain his end. Had he not been told again and again that in the attempt death was almost certain? Yet in the intensity of his devotion, he never gave up. Whatever the obstacles, and they were at times seemingly insurmountable, including those of his physical unfitness for high mountain trekking and the constant discouragement of his well-wishers, he kept on. Never did he entertain a thought for turning back. True, he was not without encouragement. Along the way, floods of support came to him through dreams or visions, miracles, or kumbhas. Not only did his own fortitude sustain him, but he knew that his Lord was with him. And in the end, after all, was not a disaster, for he died with a sense of great spiritual joy and peace, and with the knowledge that he had risked all, given his all to find God. Whether Swami Trigunatita had or not had such a meaning in mind, the story as he told it and as it ended was, curiously and essentially, the story of his own life. In every step of that pilgrimage, his character was delineated. His unshakable will, his scorn of hardship, his welcome of death, if death was the price of pushing forward to attain his goal, his inner strength that knew no defeat. Years later, Swami Saradananda would tell an American disciple of Swami Trigunatita that her guru had once asked what a martyr was. He, not knowing the English word, when told, Swami Trigunatita had said he would like that role. And indeed, the desire to give his all for an ideal and for the pursuance of Swamiji's work would burn within him throughout his life. And how delighting it is to note that even though his abandonment by the gruff Bhutes was a fantasy, the Swami, in his tale, bore toward them not the least resentment. Rather, he excused them, explaining that they had done what they had to do, without fear or anger. His mind was free to experience the joy that came to him. And this part was perhaps not altogether fantasy, for throughout the trek he had often known such spiritual elation. One story remains to tell before we leave this Tibetan journey. It is a true story, though of a supernatural kind, such as Swami Trigunatita would not recount in the Indian Mirror, but such that he might tell his brothers, who in turn would relate it to younger monks, thus keeping it alive in the order. It's called the oral history of the order. Swami Ashokananda had told of this particular event, which took place at one time or another on the Tibetan pilgrimage. On that journey to Tibet, Swami Trigunatita had an extraordinary experience. He had to cross a broad river at night. There was a very powerful current with a few stones here and there, which the water ran over. It was moonlight, but he could barely see the stones, and if his feet should slip, he was bound to be swept away to almost certain death. As he came to the middle of that wide river, suddenly a dark cloud came over the moon and obliterated his views. He didn't know what to do, and then he heard a voice, "Follow me." He saw a person going ahead of him, and he followed him until he came to the other side. By that time, the cloud had passed, and he could see, but there was no man. He thought this too, like his boyhood experience on the way to Puri, was an act of divine providence. He had many such experiences. I think we'll stop there today. I know it's a little early because we're starting chapter 4, In the Service of God in Man. Any questions or comments on his journey to Tibet? Okay. I hope you all had a good weekend last weekend. We certainly did. We had our Karma Yoga Day, which everyone did a wonderful job. I hate to say it, but we put everyone to work cleaning our Christmas closet and then putting up half of the decorations. And they did a beautiful job. Saturday, Swami Trigunatita will have the gospel class. No. We have canceled the gospel class for this Saturday. We have canceled it. We have also canceled, good, we don't have it listed. Swami Mahayogananda will give a lecture, Blessed are the Pure in Heart. And last Sunday we heard Vajrapana talk about this beatitude. It's one of the most important beatitudes that we have. As Swamiji said, if nothing was left of any religion but that one statement, we would always have religion. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So Swami Mahayogananda will give that lecture on Wednesday the 24th, midst maybe 7 inches of rain in Santa Barbara. We will be having our Christmas carol and gospel readings from the Gospels. And the Christmas carols are sing-along. So everyone, even if it's raining, come on up and you can sing Christmas carols till your heart's delight. Then, that's the 24th. Swami Sarvadevananda is coming up the next weekend, so his Bhagavad Gita class will be on Saturday the 27th. And, Oh, yeah. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, I forgot. That's not even listed. We never list this, but we always have a Christ Puja on the 25th. And everyone is welcome to come. It's prasad in hand. That means we give you a package of prasad at the end of the worship. 27th will be Swami Sarvadevananda with his Gita class. Then he is going to give a talk on the 28th about the unconditional love of Jesus and Ma Sarada. And of course, on New Year's Eve, we will be having our New Year's Eve meditation starting at 11:30 and going till 12. Everyone's welcome to come. Any other questions about anything that's going on? And I hope you all wrote that down. Most of it will be online if you're not in town here. Okay? Any questions from anyone here in the auditorium? No? Okay. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. I know I cannot, as many times as we read the life stories of Ramakrishna's direct disciples, I am in total awe of the absolute dedication all of them had, to the extent that they never thought of themselves. I mean, they truly gave their entire life breath to their Guru, Sri Ramakrishna. It's always inspiring for me. I hope for all of you. Okay. Hope to see you all. If not, won't see you for a while. The ones online. Have a wonderful Christmas. Have a wonderful Christmas Eve wherever you are. Okay?